swear I'm never gonna figure these things out. Maybe if I press that. There we go. That works. Took long enough. Well, we made it through the warp station. I always have held a particular interest in the warps, even if the Eternians hold half of them in their palm. The amount of effort it takes to build these enormous floating gates to anywhere across the galaxies is just astounding. Turning adamite steel and fluxar crystals into something so beautiful and intricate beyond my knowledge is intriguing, to say the least. They're like stars of their own, with massive arcing towers and control centers where drones and sentients alike manage all who go through the gates with almost unseeing eyes. Gigantic cores powering the gates with cold flux energy and casting that calming pale glow for parsecs in every direction, perfectly outlining the thousands of ships waiting to get through to where they need to go. However, certain bounty hunters have a few tricks up their sleeves to get past those sentries and lines through unconventional methods. But I digress. Just the sheer mass and intricacy of the warp array as a whole is just beautiful in its own right. They provide limitless possibilities to everyone who can afford to access them, moving across the galaxies in what could potentially take thousands of years in a matter of mere days. It makes a little ship like the Scout seem just that much smaller. But the gates don't differentiate between who uses them, whether or not you're an Algarian warship or a humble Tatago survey vessel. They allow anyone to pass through and get wherever they need or want to go. Technology like that doesn't belong in the hands of anyone. It's a shame to see that the majority of them have been commandeered by one faction or another. I wonder if there'll ever come a day when the warp station is free for all to use. They're just such marvels that it seems wrong any faction or individual should have any control of them. At least that's what I think. But enough of that. I'm getting off track again. Getting through the gates was rather difficult this time around. I can usually find a way to get through the sentries undetected, but there was an incident, so the place was under high alert. Usually, the cores just lose power for a moment or a faulty drone knocks a switch somewhere, sending the space traffic into chaos as everyone tries to go through at the same time. But this time was something completely different, though it's becoming a more common occurrence. The Eternians were attacked by the Baratari again, who hacked into some of the sentries, caused a backup of vessels for what looked like an entire parsec. There were so many scanning drones everywhere and Eternian fighter ships that I thought I was going to get caught for sure. Well, at least if I just tried to cut through to the front and warp. I had no choice but to slip through during the confusion after a few rather disgruntled pilots began playing bumper spacecraft with each other in an attempt to get further up ahead in the line. Since the Eternians had scrambled their spacecraft before I could arrive in time, that little mess had provided just enough distractions for me to get through to some confidence. So, I slipped under a transport ship and flipped on the Scout's cloaking mechanisms until I'd made my way through. By the time the Eternians realized that there was a ship underneath that big vessel, I'd already sped ahead and gone through the gate. Not to say they didn't get a few lucky shots off on old Scout before my rather brazen escape. Not my finest exit, but definitely not my worst. Certainly hard to outrun an Eternian fighter, and even harder to hide from one. But in the end, I made it relatively unscathed, so I can't gripe too hard about it. The shield ate most of the damage, but it certainly drained my power core a fair bit. Anyways, I'm just in transit now, watching my already low fuel levels deplete steadily. I didn't think that it would take so long to get through the gate, or that I'd have to burn through a few energy units to get away from those Eternians. But it is what it is. Probably won't be able to search for that cargo the Hugak needs until I've docked on Terra. I haven't been here in a long time, but the last time I did, they certainly didn't have a lot of tech available. I hope that they've come to acquire at least some of the basic necessities over the last 100 years or so. I don't expect too much, but one can hope. Now, let's see what that Hugak sent me in regards to what he's actually looking for. Might as well do some light reading while I wait to arrive at my destination. Seems like it's just some parts for an old engine, according to the manifest of the ship they lost. Peculiar. Says here on the logs that the ship transporting this cargo was destroyed by colliding with asteroids. Normally this wouldn't be very odd, since it's common knowledge that Hugaks are lacking in their ability to navigate through rough terrain very well. But the ship that was transporting the cargo was a combat-class vessel, extremely high armor capacity and more than enough firepower to clear out some asteroids, even with a Hugak at the helm. Why would a Hugak issue a critical alert and pay out such a sum for a float-away hull's worth of junk that couldn't be worth more than a few thousand unicredits at best? Why would the ship carrying such junk be decked out for a full assault? And furthermore, what could have destroyed that vessel? There's no way any small asteroid could have annihilated a ship like that, not with what these records are showing. There's so much here which doesn't make sense in any regard. I've got no doubt in my mind that Hugak isn't telling me everything, but at the end of the day, I guess a job's a job. Guess I'm not paid to know what I could be dealing with. Regardless, maybe once I'm finished this contract, I'll be able to purchase myself one of those transponders from Algek and be able to talk to you again from almost anywhere in the galaxy. Yeah, that sounds like a good plan. I'll do that. It'll be well worth it, I'm sure. I wonder how much has changed on Proxima. How much you've changed, or if you've changed at all. Knowing you, it'd probably only be for the better if nothing else. You know, I've been thinking about things we could do together once we're, well, together again. Not that it isn't outlandish that I think about you a bit more than I care to admit. The ship gets kind of lonely, and I feel like having you here would just be so good. The cockpit has got 2 seats for a reason, and I hope to finally see you there one day. I'll make it happen. Mark my words. The silence is calming out here. Only the subtle hum of the generators in the subdeck and the occasional hiss of oxygen being recycled and vented into the live deck accompany me. The occasional beep from the consoles or the groan of the hull as it's thrust through space are all else that's usually heard, besides whatever noises I make. There is Crimson, the artificial intelligence we installed early on the construction of the Scout, but for some reason, his audio capabilities have been rendered ineffective. Probably something with the software being damaged. I'll have to get that sorted out, since having to manually read what they're saying to me can be rather tedious and dry at times. Ah, there they are now. I am not dry. I am incapable of being either wet or dry. That's true, Crimson. Very true. But yes, things I want to do with you. One thing I want for us to do is go to Orion Cassar 82, right before dusk, so we can see Cassar's sun descending over the fields of glow-spark grass. Watching that beautiful ember glow fade to the pale, cold blue moon, bringing the glow sparks to life. When a glow spark patch is exposed to moonlight, it unfurls forth from its housing, reaching outwards and capturing the soft rays, glowing as their namesake would suggest. Seeing an entire field of these beautiful specimens while relaxing on top of the ship would be a dream indeed. Witnessing anything so natural and beautiful with you would be a dream. Smelling that sweet smell they give off when they're in full bloom, and watching as they release their seeds into the gentle winds. carrying these small glowing pods off into eternity to grow life elsewhere. It's always so interesting to think about how something so small and dainty can be so resilient. Glow sparks don't need much to survive, just carbon dioxide, space, water, and non-harsh lighting. Natural little miracles, these things. I have one in a jar I've been trying to grow. Picked a few and put most of what I harvested into cryo while I tried my hand at growing this one to full maturity. It seems to be doing well so far. Little guy's just starting to sprout when I turn off the cabin lights. If he's gotten enough sunlight, he can just barely make out that little bluish yellow glow they give off. If you were here, I'm sure you'd be able to nurture it way better than I am. But I'm doing my best. Never have been any good at growing things. But it reminds me of that chubby little plant you doted on so much on Proxima 5. One of those Terran plants, what were they called again? Succulents, yes, succulents. They don't look really similar, but I'll try and take care of this one like you did take care of Chubbs. If I don't end up killing it, I'll definitely have to see if I can't warp package you some seeds so you can add to that tiny collection of plants you've got growing back home. Hopefully, it'll remind you of me. Now, where else would I want to take you? Pharasmin. Yes, definitely Pharasmin. It's just as old and full of history as any other place in the galaxy. Completely abandoned once the Vardalis eradicated them millennia ago. All that remains of Pharasmin is a massive, empty, floating city the size of a small planet. I wonder what it would have been like to live there. The only reason I found it in the first place was through rumors floating around while I was sweating half to death on Arakara. The technology that's kept that place intact after all these years is far beyond our time. Makes you wonder how strong the Vardalis was. Scary to think about, not that it matters anymore. All that remains of both civilizations are faint rumors and half-destroyed memory logs. So much mystery, so much to explore. And hopefully I can do all of that with you. Walking through the ruins of a lost civilization and seeing what we can find. Just like back on Proxima, but without a fee charged to everything we found. And no returning enforcers making sure we weren't stealing away our finds. Not that it got to us too much, evidently. I'd visited it briefly, but didn't get a chance to descend since I still had to take care of that rather interesting diplomat on Arakara. But I did manage to mark it on my nav logs before departing. I plan on returning there someday. You wouldn't even be able to imagine how strange and beautiful it looked. Think of 3 massive curving arches with thousands of buildings built into them, all locking into a single cylinder with a dying power core. Slowly turning the 3 arches and keeping the structure's artificial gravity just barely intact. On the surface, streets, manufacturing facilities, wrecks of old ships lying where they fell however long ago, and canals, long since dried up with only glowing blue coolant running slowly through them, probably due to leakage somewhere within the structure. The whole thing is like an enormous time capsule, just waiting to be cracked open. I bet there's so much we could learn from it. Whatever hasn't been taken on the surface level or destroyed beyond recognition could potentially be of use to us. Or, if worst comes to worst, we can, maybe, sell off whatever baubles we find for a pretty unicred or two to some collector. Either way, I feel like it'd be a fun little excursion for the both of us. The things we could do once you've sorted out your business on Proxima 5 are limited only by our imaginations. And the day you're free from the bonds that hold you there, I'm going to embrace you as tight as I can. And I'll never let you go once I do. You've given up so much for me, and even though you say it's fine or it wasn't much, I know that you've made sacrifices for me to chase my own fortunes, and what goes around comes around. I'll make sure to take care of you just the way you've taken care of me. The second I can, I will repay you for the kindness you've shown and given to me to get me where I am now. You need to think about yourself sometimes, take care of your own needs, and quit putting stops in your plans. As good as it is of you, sometimes you just gotta be a little greedy. You've always been like that, helping others around you and never thinking of yourself. You silly thing. Well, looks like we're about to arrive. Not a bad travel time. What a quaint little galaxy this is. Terra, Solus, and Luna, the big three of the Milky Way Galaxy. It certainly has its charms. I wonder how it's going to be down there. Last time I was there was so long ago. But I digress. Let's do a quick damage assessment, see what Crimson can pull up for me. Looks like the shields ate up most of the few shots that managed to catch me. Didn't cause any severe damage to the hull, but I'm certainly gonna have to make a few repairs the next chance I get. Can't risk having a hull breach at some point when I'm in warp and getting sucked out into the vacuum of space, can we? What else is there? Some general maintenance on the thrusters, a bit of rust forming on the rear fin, and that's going to be expensive. Looks like letting the power be so low for so long has shorted out my clandestine processor. Probably only going to be able to enter and leave stealth a handful more times before it's completely fried out. Now, let's see, what else is there? Dusting. Yes, dusting. Guess I have been neglecting the interior a bit since I've been so busy on contracts and keeping the ship space-worthy. Still, I can't forget about the smaller things. Well, looks like I'm just about running on empty. I'll have to talk to you later. After I find some fuel dog on Terra before I'm completely out of juice. But I will get back in contact with you. That's a promise. I'll do my best to send you more of these audio logs, and I hope to see you soon. This is Ryker Feldstar, Audio Log 2, signing off.